simply take just a moment to offer our sincere gratitude and appreciation for Rabbi David Lazar coming to bring a message to us today. This is an extraordinarily busy time in the life of a rabbi, being Passover time, and so we are very grateful that he is able to be with us on this day and to share with us in our connectedness as people of God. I'm also grateful for Rabbi Lazar as a colleague in our bit of like progressive thinking, a little more open-minded clergy in the Palm Springs area, and it has been a great gladness that I've had to work with him on a couple of things, specifically including the first ever Interfaith Pride Shabbat that was at Temple Isaiah this past Pride weekend on Friday night, and now is considered one of the official events that'll be listed in the program for this next year, and so we hope to see everyone there as a part of this. It was a very stirring time, and it was something that we were able to work on together and very much appreciated in our community as well as the community in general. Rabbi Lazar is a person who is generous with his relationships, and I know that there are others of my colleagues who are grateful for his association with them in the brief time that he's been with us here in Palm Springs. I know also that he is generous with his goodness and wisdom, as we found when he came and spoke Wednesday night to our Bible Bites group and shared a little bit about Isaiah, as we all shared just a little bit of that big book of Isaiah. So it's really grateful we are to have you with us today, and we're thankful for the words that you will bring us, and we welcome you.
Thank you, Rev Kev. Being the new guy on the block, it's nice to have somebody who's been around to tell me what is and what isn't in the desert, from a spiritual point of view and from a progressive spiritual point of view. We have a word in Hebrew, it's actually in Aramaic, chevruta, which is based on the word chaver, which is all Semitic languages. It has to do with people that come together, that bind together. And a chevruta is a term from the yeshiva world, the Talmudic academies, which I attended when I was younger. I moved to Israel when I was 18 to attend one such academy, and you have somebody you study with, a study partner, for much of the day, and that person is called a chevruta. Rev Kev is my chevruta. We meet probably once a month at Starbucks. We won't tell you which one, although I'm sure you can guess, to discuss, and I kid you not, to discuss matters of great importance. Theology, a progressive approach to theology. What might we have in common? What's different? I'm learning a tremendous amount from this particular brand type of Christianity that I've not yet been exposed to, and I'm happily embracing it. Not as a new Christian, but as a rabbi, as a Jew, who believes that it's important to have an ongoing, not only dialogue, but a multi-log, having all these voices around and strengthening my own Jewish identity, understanding what I am and what I'm not, what I have to learn from the other, and what I have to teach. So I'm here to hopefully teach just a little bit today, but I want to share with you something that was established about a century before Jesus' time. Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik, Simon the righteous person, he's quoted as saying, and you may have heard this before, and there's different versions of 3 pillars, but his version was, the world rests upon 3 pillars, upon Torah, Avodah, and Gimilut Chasadim. Torah, you've heard the word Torah before probably, usually in the context of the 5 books of Moses, but Torah is really all kinds of Jewish learning, traditionally, and I would say today, in our attitude at Temple Isaiah, it's all kind of learning, all kind of intellectual growth. That's one pillar of society. That's what keeps us, humanity, sustained. We're continuously growing from an intelligence point of view. The second is Avodah, which is worship, or I would say today, spiritual practice. Because I wouldn't want to rule out things that are not considered worship, like yoga, like I saw a sign here for karate, or meditation, of course, walking in nature, music, arts. There's so many types of spiritual practice, but it's that spiritual practice that allows us human beings to grow beyond our intelligence to our souls, or however we understand spiritus. And finally, there's Gimilut Chasadim, often translated as loving kindness, but I would say fixing the world. These are the three things that allow us, humanity, to grow and to keep going. We study together, we pray together, and we fix the world together. So I'm happy to have the opportunity, not my first time with Rev Kev, and not my first time with you as well, to pray together, to study together, and then we go out and we fix the world. But actually by doing this right now, we're fixing the world. Because when you think about all the places in the world where this is not possible, all the places in the United States, perhaps places here in the Coachella Valley where this is not possible, and you think of all the times in history where it certainly was not possible, and the places where even today, perhaps Jews are not persecuting Christians, but Christians are being persecuted by other people, and there's a lot going on at different levels. It's not always has to do with physical violence, it's emotional violence as well. So in this way, we're fixing the world. And now to the task at hand, talking about today's readings. I noticed, by the way, you only have two. I'm used to coming to church and having three. And whenever I'm in a church, usually perhaps probably most in Episcopal churches, the priest is always worried about that third text and how the rabbi is going to react. Because, often in Paul, it's not an easy swallow, right? It's got a lot of issues, and the truth is he's probably right. If not about all of them, then most of them. In the same way that when Jesus lashes out, I guess I could use that word, although I imagine your translations have calmed that down a little bit. When Jesus, according to the simple meaning of the Greek, lashes out at the Pharisees and the temple officials, they deserved it. I'm the first to say that as a Jew. A self-reflection, understanding that we as Jews have not always been according to what our own Torah teaches us. And it's easy to lose sight of the real essence of living a Torah lifestyle by focusing on the minutiae. Many of my co-religionists see that these days, preparation for Passover, perhaps many people, ourselves included, the synagogue included, we clean house, literally clean house, to make sure there's no unleavened crumbs lying around. Certainly no bread and products that we put them away. We do a fictitious kind of a selling it to a non-Jew, so it's not in our possession. But some people get so involved in that, they forget that it's also about cleaning your heart. In fact, it's mostly about cleaning your soul and getting prepared for a time of renewal. Pesach, Passover, is a holiday of renewal. It's the holiday when we as a people became a nation. Until that moment, we were a collection of tribes, speaking with the collective memory of me being a Jew, growing up with the Hebrew scripture. And we were a group of tribes that came together, not always getting together, and we were molded into a nation. Can't think of the word right now, whatever you do with metal. We were forged into being a nation with this experience of leaving Egypt. And we learned that there is one God, and there is one Lord. Another person cannot lord over another person. There's one being to which we turn to for that kind of power, understanding that power, and that is God. That is Yah, Adonai. And in that story that we tell ourselves last night and the night before at our Seder, sometimes it's easy to get lost in, well, how many cups of wine did we drink, and how many children were quoted, and how this and the hiding of the Afikomen. There's all this kind of stuff. If you've been to a Seder, you can get lost in the details and forget about the entire message. So I find the message expressed very lovely in the two readings that we have today. The first one is from the Psalms, and it's not the only psalm that tells us, listen people, go out into nature and learn what's going on in the world. This is not an animation. This is not a cartoon you're supposed to imagine. This is not a fantasy world. No, this is the world. Go into those mountains. Go up there and see how the water trickles out from the snow that's above there. See how little animals can survive with a little bit of greenery in the desert. Go into the other parts of nature. Go to the snow-capped mountains. Go to the fields of nature, even though human beings have been involved in growing things. Look at nature around you. Nature is screaming in a good way, is shouting. Look at what the Lord created. Look what Adonai made. This stuff works. And we had nothing to do with it. We didn't manipulate it. And yes, we can. That's part of our godliness, to be able to be part of the creative process, at least from a Jewish point of view. We too become creators, not just in making children for those who choose or can have children, but for creating society, for creating inventions, technologies. All that is good when we're careful. But you want to know where the real praise comes? Go out at night in the desert and look at the stars. Look at all those stars that our ancestors imagined to be angels, or before that gods, with a little g, and the sun and the moon. Look at that spectacular dance that happens every night and every morning. And then you learn about praising the Lord. In our service in the morning and the evening, both we have 3 services a day in the Jewish tradition, the morning and evening service, before we say the Shema Yisrael, Hear O Israel, which is the height of the service, we have 2 blessings. The first blessing talks about the light. In the morning, the light of the morning, the sun coming up. In the evening, the light of the moon and the stars when the sun goes down, and how we are comforted by this order in the universe. This impeccable order where nothing clashes into it, nothing crashes into it. It all works. And it moves in the sky. It's amazing for us. So we learn something about praise. And prophets like Isaiah took it a step further, or were taken a step further, to learn not only how to praise, the idea of praising, but to learn exactly what to praise. The words from, I don't know if it's on liturgy today, but holy, holy, holy. Kadosh, 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 Adonai tzvaot, melech kol haaretz kvodo. Isaiah learns from the heavenly beings, from those creatures, whether they're seraphim or ophanim, they're wheels, or they're creatures, sacred creatures, whatever he imagined them to be, whatever Ezekiel imagined them to be in the beginning of the book of Ezekiel, there's this stuff going on which the prophet actually learns the words of the prayer from. And it's not only our prayer, the Jewish tradition, it's become your prayer as well for 2,000 years. So we learn to praise, and we learn perhaps the foundations of what it means to be in a loving relationship. A loving relationship is when we interact and we don't destroy. We interact in such a way that not only keeps the other from damage, from any kind of something going wrong, we interact in a way that allows both parties or all parties involved to grow. And that's what we see in nature. We turn to the second reading today from the Gospel. The good news, the news. There's something a little peculiar here as a rabbi reading this text. And I see I'm not the only one when I looked into commentaries. It seems to be an age-old question when Jesus says to the others, Jesus says, I've got a new mitzvah for you. I've got a new commandment for you. New? How about Leviticus? Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Love your neighbor, or love your other as you love yourself. How about Hillel 100 years beforehand, who said, don't do unto others that you would not have them do to you. A reverse kind of a golden rule. It's been around a lot, and yet Jesus says to the disciples in this final conversation that could have been the Seder, maybe it was, I know many people believed for years it was, contested a little bit in modern New Testament scholarship, but let's say right now the Passover Seder, I think it fits well, certainly on this Passover morning. And he says, and he turns to them and he says, little children. He calls them little children. They're not children. Why does he call them little children? Lovely interpretation that I saw is that it fits the Pesach, the Passover context, in which families come together. Passover is the only time an offering is made, a sacrificial offering is made outside of the temple. Afterwards it was herded into the temple because the authorities thought that these Jewish families would not do it right. But that's the priests in the population getting a little bit too worried about the minutiae. But in its essence, it's a family sacrifice. And the text in Exodus says you have to pick an animal according to the size of the family. If it's a small family, pick a little animal, a little goat or a lamb, either one was fine from that family. And if you didn't have enough in your family, then get another family and do it together. But nothing should be left over, no bone should be broken. It's to be treated in a very sacred way, but it's a familial eating. It's small, intimate community coming together. And Jesus, as here at this point, the teacher, turns to his disciples, who are grown men, and says, little children, because we're in a family situation, and right now I represent Abba. I'm the one who's representing God, the Father, in this particular situation. And I've got something new for you. And I don't for 1 minute think that Jesus or John or whoever created this text thought that this was a new commandment, but was telling you something even more important. And that something so simple as, I love you, said so often and used and just thrown around, this idea of love, it gets old, it gets stale, it gets empty. It becomes a symbol without anything in there, nothing no kishkis, no filling inside of that symbol. So you've got to make it new at least once a year, if not every day. It has to become, you have to say it's new because you've got to find it anew. If you relax and you let it go, and you assume it's there, you take it for granted, it probably won't happen. Those of us who are in long-standing relationships, I've been married this summer for 35 years, believe me, I know how difficult it is to find the newness of the relationship every time. We know that with our children and we know that with our parents. And while there's certain instincts we have, the true, the essential love needs to be found anew every day. So I hope that we've looked at the scriptures, the gospel and the Psalms. We've looked at nature to find the lesson in how to love, how to praise. We look at something that happened in your tradition 2,000 years ago, and we say that's something we can learn from. And we figure out, how do we apply that today? How do we go from looking into nature to the second blessing before we say Shema in the morning and the evening, which is about love and about learning? How do we get to know the other? Look at the other's eyes, whether it's the close other or the more distant other, and find what that love might be. May it be a blessed Sunday for all of you.